Electronisounds Audio, the YouTube channel for you.
Hey, what's happening, guys? It's Dean from Electronisounds. Stick around. Today, I'm going to show you how I put together a drum and bass live set using hardware only and no computer. Come on, let's get into this. Before we get started today, be sure and subscribe if you're into this kind of content. On this channel, I talk about everything from building drum and bass live jams to working with iPads and sound design. Be sure and subscribe. We're not going to be getting into the individual boxes today, and we're not going to be worrying about how to write drum and bass inside of these boxes. What we're going to be doing today is more of a global, zoomed out view on all of the pieces that are involved in a jam like this and how I've got everything routed and working together. Let's go ahead and start by going over the pieces of gear that we've got out today. This is the Akai MPC Live. This is a sampler and a groove box and a sequencer. This is a DJ mixer from Allen and Heath. It's the Zone DB2 DJ mixer, and it allows me to route all of these different devices into it and then mix back and forth between the grooves in those boxes. I'm going to show you how I'm doing that in just a minute. Next up on the table, we've got the Korg ESX1 sampling groove box. This is a sampler and a groove box, so it allows me to put my own sounds inside of this guy. This is the Korg EMX1 groove box. It works very similarly to the ESX1, but it does not allow you to import your own sounds. You can only use the sounds that come with this box. Next up on the table, we've got the Electron Digitact, which is a wonderful sampler and groove box, one of my absolute favorite pieces to work with these days. Over here, we've got the Korg Electribe Sampler 2. It's the follow-up to these units here. It's the next unit in that product line. And then finally, the synthesizer that I'm using today is the Access Virus Darkstar synthesizer. And that's all of the pieces of gear that we're using today. Let me go ahead and show you guys how this stuff is routed. How I decided to get this routed was to do individual grooves inside of these groove boxes. They're not really working with each other per se. I'm using the red Electribe sampler and the blue Electribe groove box as one unit, so those are talking to each other, but everything else is working separately. So I've got separate grooves coming out of the Digitact, and I've got separate grooves coming out of the newer Electribe sampler as well. I've got two different grooves in the newer Electribe sampler. I've got three different grooves inside of the Electron Digitact, and I've got one longer groove inside of these two Korg groove boxes that I can just, play back. I've got lots of programming done beforehand. If you watch the jam, in case you missed the jam, I'll put a link to the original jam that I'm referring to up in the corner here. I did a lot of programming beforehand. I'm not necessarily using these boxes to create a jam in real time, but rather what we're doing here is we're syncing up existing jams that I have programmed inside of these boxes. And how much you interact with the boxes themselves in real time as the jam is going, that's sort of your workflow. I'm more of a program a lot of things beforehand kind of guy, as opposed to just working the boxes in real time. The more things that I can sort of have done beforehand so that I can focus on the mixing of these three different per se grooves and playing things over the top of those grooves. That's really what I'm interested, to try to tie them all together as a cohesive piece rather than trying to struggle in real time to actually interact with and create new things inside of the boxes as the jam is going. I've got this routed so that we've got a MIDI out. I've got the ESX as my main master device here. I'm taking a MIDI out from the ESX1 and I'm running that into a MIDI Solutions Quadra through. And that gives me 4 MIDI outputs coming out of this that are going to be the exact same now as this MIDI cable that's coming out of the original source. So I'm taking an output from the Quadra through and I'm running that MIDI into the EMX. I'm also taking it out and I'm running that into the Digitact, and I'm also taking an out and I'm running that into the newer Korg Electribe sampler. And what happens now, it's going to get a little loud when I press play. When I press play, all 4 boxes start going. And now I'm able to use the Allen and Heath mixer to mix between those. So all of these things are going in real time, and at any time I can switch back and forth between them using the crossfader on the DJ mixer. I've got these two groove boxes. Again, these are working together. I've got these being routed to inputs 1 and 2, and they're being sent to the the left side of the crossfader. Okay, on the next two channels, I've got the Digitact and the other Electribe so that I can bring their volumes up. So we've got the Digitact on 3 and we've got that other Electribe on 4. Whenever I bring the crossfader over to this side, it's now playing one of those two boxes, and it takes away the sound from these first two boxes. Let me go ahead and I've got the Korgs set up so where whenever I change a pattern on the ESX one, by default it changes to that exact same pattern number on the EMX one. So these are working in complete sync with each other. Let me go ahead and play a groove here. I hope that's not too loud. So all 4 boxes are going, and you can hear that. If I switch over using the crossfader, here on the left we're hearing the groove that's coming out of the Electribes. And as I switch that over to the right, we're hearing a groove that's coming out of the Digitact. Okay, now, depending on whether I have level 3 or level 4 up on the mixer, we're either going to be hearing the Digitact on 3 or the Electribe on 4, or not really because I don't have it plugged in properly with the MIDI just this very second. Let me fix that. Hold on one sec. Sorry about that. I was doing some exporting of patterns inside the Electribe yesterday, so I had its MIDI routing set back to internal clock and not external clock to pick up that signal. But so now it's fixed, and if I press play over here, we've got all 4 boxes going. And if I turn the volume up on level 3, we're hearing what's coming out of the Digitact. And if I turn the volume up on level 4, we're hearing what's coming out of the Electribe sampler. So again, depending on which 3 or 4 level is up, that's which machine I'm able to switch back and forth between from these 2 boxes to one of those boxes here. So again, if I've got, the groove going in these boxes, and I turn up, let's say, the 4th fader here, and I slide it over, now I'm literally sliding in to the Electribe sampler. And again, if I do that same thing, where we're over here with these 2 boxes up, but I have the 3rd fader up instead, and I slide the crossfader over, now we're hearing what's happening in the Digitact. And now as this is going, I can change patterns in any of these boxes in real time as well. So I can come over to the Digitact and change the pattern. Now I could maybe change the pattern on the ESX and EMX so that when I go back, it's playing a different pattern than when I left. Okay. We just wait for this to transfer over, wait for the downbeat. These are 8-bar patterns in the Electribe. And now when I switch back over, we're back to these 2 boxes. But I'm playing a different groove now this time because when we had the volume up on one of these boxes, I'm able to switch and then I can go back and forth. The same thing with these boxes over here. While these 2 boxes are playing, I can switch to a different pattern in the Electribe or in the Digitact rather, or in the Electribe. And then when I move this crossfader over, it's going to switch to one of those. I learned a couple of really, really basic DJ techniques for how to actually mix between these grooves. I'm going to switch the camera and I'll show you precisely how I did that using this mixer here. Okay, so I am definitely not a DJ, but I needed to learn a transition that would allow me to go back and forth between whatever grooves that I wanted to, go back and forth between. I don't have to worry about beat matching or beat syncing because everything is already matched up via MIDI. I've written all of these grooves in the same key, so I'm not worried about beat matching or key matching. I just have to do as little as possible over the top because I'm very much a beginner at the whole combining grooves together in real time situation. Now what we've got here is I've got, again, the ESX and the EMX coming through on channels 1 and 2. I'm going to go ahead and, there's no direct sound today. It's more important that you hear what I'm saying than what we listen to the direct sound. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be counting in my head. After about measure 4, I'm going to start bringing in some delay on these first 2 channels here. And then when I bring the faders on those channels down, the delay tail is going to still ring out, giving a little bit of a gap and some air in the mix, and that's going to allow me to then drop the, move the crossfader over to the second, set of grooves here from either the Digitact or the Electribe, depending on which channel is up in the mixer. I hope that makes sense, and we're going to go ahead and give this a go in real time. So I'm playing the groove here. 4. So we bring the delay up on the track that's playing, then we bring the volume down on the track that's playing and let that delay tail ring out for the rest of bar 8, and then we move the crossfader so that at the beginning of measure 9 will be the next downbeat, we're hearing the next groove. We're going to go ahead and go back to the original Electribes now. I'll just make sure that these channels are up. We're not hearing them because the crossfader is all the way to the right. And we're going to do the same technique. I'm going to bring in the delay, then I'll bring the track channel down. We'll let that delay ring out, and then I'll switch back on the downbeat. And there we have it. So, depending on which of these faders is up on the right-hand side, I'm either mixing into the Electribe if I have number 4 up, or I'm mixing into the Digitact if I have that fader up. And I can go back and forth here by just whatever units are up, I fade in that delay, I bring down the volume on those faders, let that delay tail ring out for the rest of bar 8, and then we just move the crossfader to the other side on the beginning of the downbeat of the next measure. I hope that makes sense. Let me go ahead and show that to you one more time in real time. We're going to go ahead and bring the 4th level fader up. That means I'm going to mix into the Electribe, not the Digitact this time. And I'm just counting 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2, 3, 4, 6, 2, 3, 4, 7, 2, 4, 8, 2, 3, and let's do that again. I'll go back. So I'm going to reset the effects. I'll bring the levels up on the Electribes because the crossfader's over to the right, so we're not hearing them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2, 3, 4, 6, 2, 3, 4, 7, 2, 3, and 8. Hopefully you get it a little bit smoother, but you hear what I'm saying about that counting to 8 bars? Because these are 8-bar loops that I'm working with. I hope that makes sense. We're basically just dropping the volume on the track on the beginning of the 7th measure, letting that delay tail ring out for the 8th bar, and then we're bringing the crossfader to whichever we're going back to on the next downbeat. I hope that makes sense. I know these type of explanation videos can get a little bit long-winded sometimes, so thanks if you're still sticking with me. I'm just going to show you the last few elements that I'm using to kind of tie all of these grooves together, because remember, I've written 6 individual grooves, and I'm just mixing back and forth between them. What I've done is I'll go ahead and do the sounds that I'm using in the synthesizer first. What I've done is I've got myself a little riser sound, which is sort of useful for just sort of adding that forward momentum, like when I'm going to transfer into a next pattern or a next section, just to kind of get that lift. And it's just something that I can do in real time, you know, as opposed to just changing patterns. I've also got, let's see here, a second riser patch that I'm using. You know, just to help build the momentum before those transitions occur. Here we've got a really frenetic kind of chemical sounding drum and bass kind of noise arpeggio, and I can move the mod wheel on that, make it a little bit more noisy as well. Lastly, inside of the virus, I've got a lead sound. Just something that I can play over any of these grooves at any time during the mix. I picked a sound that was complementary to the grooves that I'm working with here. And then the last thing that we haven't really mentioned yet is just the vocal samples that I'm able to trigger in real time.
It's a spiritual experience.
I just found these off of a YouTube video. That's typically how I find the vocal samples that I'm working with. And I find that including vocal samples inside of a live jam really helps the listener identify with the live jams that you're doing. I mean, I could put out a live jam every day for 7 days, but if there's no vocal samples in those, I mean, they're all just, you know, instrumental jams. You know, how do you refer back to that? How do you find one that you like or whatever? But with a vocal sample in there, it kind of gives each one a little bit more of its own identity, I feel. So I find that taking that extra time to find, you know, something that you can maybe chop up into a few different ones.
When you just let go.
You know, just some fun stuff to trigger during the jam. I think that's really about it, other than going into the actual boxes, which we're not going to be doing today. Just want to let you know that I do have a sound pack for the Electribe ESX1 over at Electronisounds.com. If you like my sounds, be sure to check out my sound packs. I've also got 7 sound banks for the Electron Digitact, and I've just finished a sound bank for the Electribe Sampler 2. It's called Ignition, and it's already available. There'll be some videos breaking that bank down coming real soon as well. In fact, that's one of the reasons why this jam exists, because I wanted to be able to combine one of the drum and bass grooves that I've written in my ESX1 pack with a couple of the drum and bass grooves that I've got in my new Electribe sample pack. As well as, you know, just some of the hard-hitting drum sounds that I got in my Digitact packs. I hope you guys have found this walkthrough breakdown useful. If you have any questions, please put those down in the comments, and I'll do my best to answer those. Until next time, thanks for watching.
To be happy, to have a good time was a real thing. It wasn't a throwaway thing.